The following is a Claibs online production. Lunch with Claibs and Joe on claibsonline.com.
All right, Claibs, here we go. It's another Monday as we welcome you on into Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. I am Joe Roderick. We're powered by Ameren, Illinois, and driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura as we welcome in Mike Claiborne to the broadcast. Claibs, what's going on, man? Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you and all our viewers and listeners out there. Well, you know what? It was an interesting weekend for sure. We had a lot of things going on off the field, certainly because very few people are on the field. And it looks like we have a little movement with baseball we'll certainly talk about today. NHL made some statements last week about their direction. And a few other things I think we can start to look forward to. But yeah, it was an interesting week for sure. And I'm sorry I didn't bring lunch. I had a great turkey sandwich earlier. Oh, by the way, I hung out at Fast Daddy's on Saturday for a little bit.
You did?
Fast Daddy's is wide open. They're open for business. They had the roof open, so they had a really nice crowd. People were respectfully distant from each other, but not to the point where you had to yell across the room or anything. So for anybody who's on that side of the river, hell, you don't have to be on that side of the river. You can come from St. Louis. I had a Fast Daddy on a stick, had some peel and eat shrimp, and I needed help to the car. I had a great time over there. So get on over there and see our good friends at Fast Daddy's.
We'll have to make a field trip out there sometime soon.
Yeah.
I'm from Alton, and I have not been to Fast Eddie's since they opened up the outdoor area. I've been to Fast Eddie's. I've been to Fast Eddie's.
Right, okay,
I have not been there recently enough to see the outdoor area and to see that. So I definitely need to get out there for that.
All right. I'm about to say, man, you live in Alton and you haven't been there yet? We got problems, brother.
No, it's just been, being out here in Belleville now, and every time it seems like I've gone down 255 to head to Alton, I have my kid with me, and you know the rule there. If you're not 21 or over, you can't get in there. So, having a 6-year-old with me, that doesn't fly.
Yeah, it's going to be hard for them to even try and get carded. So that's a good point. I tell you what, we ought to do this from over there one day.
Okay.
Tell you what, we're going to do it next Monday from over there.
All right, that gives me 6 days to figure out how to make this that we're doing now work with that, which I've talked about plenty on my podcast about how much I have learned over the last 6 to 8 weeks as far as how to do this stuff and put this on. That now you're adding another thing to the mix, but that's fine. I'll figure it out. We'll make it work.
Well, let me ask you something. During this shutdown of society, what have you learned that you're happy about? What did you want to be better at, and what have you lost as far as things that you don't do as much of?
I'll tell you what, and this is going to upset people that are listening, but I've lost 15 pounds. So that's one thing that I've lost through all of this. From a workout standpoint, I have learned that I was doing too much before, and now what I'm doing, I've kind of focused on that, on making the most out of my time and the equipment that I have. So I think that's going to move a lot moving forward. But I think moving just to, when this all started, I was on 590 every weekend, and you and I had planned on doing a lot of stuff here on the website and with the podcast, and all of that changed. The ideas and the plans that we had changed in kind of the beginning and middle of March. And a lot of what you're seeing, if you could go back to April and look at some of the stuff that we were putting up on the website, the videos we were doing up until what we have showing right now, what people are watching right now, and just kind of learning and adapting to really the way I think that media is going to be changing. Sports media might be changing as far as the way that people will be able to watch or get their information once sports does start back up. There are plenty of other ways to go about listening and viewing to get your news.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we were forced to do some things differently, and we had to be more creative for sure. And I think that's been a plus for people like you and me, because we have a new group of people who follow and listen to what we're doing, and hopefully they have as much fun as you and I are. But I think that's going to be a trend for the future also. I think some of the traditions that we've been accustomed to will start to gradually wane themselves out of the picture. And I think we'll start to see more things like what we're doing, and other people start being even more creative and finding out what actually sticks on the wall, which leads me to this. Um, we've heard about baseball, and they obviously had a conversation, and the players submitted us a proposal. But you had that other rumor that was swirling that there were some owners that were willing to walk away from the season completely. I think most of us know that if baseball shuts it down and they can't come to an agreement, baseball will have to get out of line in the entertainment industry. And I'm not going to say start over, but Joe, they're going to move down a few notches because A, people will be fed up. B, there'll be plenty of other alternatives, whether it's hockey or basketball. You'll have the college football season and the NFL coming up. And I think other than that, you'll have people who have already found other things to do where they don't feel like they're as hooked on a particular sport, be it baseball in this case. It'll be out of sight, out of mind. No baseball, that's cool. I'll find something else to do.
And I think that there are enough smart fans out there that knew that there were issues coming up on the horizon anyway, with a possible work stoppage, that the idea of losing all of 2020 and the threat of a possible walkout in 2021 and not knowing when baseball would come back after that, to look at this as a baseball fan and to think that you could almost go 2, maybe 3 years without the sport of baseball. How do you come back from that? You can't.
You don't. Because here's the other problem that you have. If you're gone for 3 years, that means there's some good players that have given up 3 years of their lives, much like when Ali didn't fight for 3 years. I mean, you're never going to be sane. You have to reacclimate yourself to some new players. And oh, by the way, where are the new players going to come from? Because the minor leagues will be shut down for the most part. So we're going to be so stagnant that we're basically going to have to start a sport over again, which has never been done before. So I think it would behoove everybody who is interested in baseball to get this thing resolved in a reasonable period of time. And I think they will. I think they leveled the playing field a little bit now that the players have made us a proposal. So we've got 2 different proposals, both at vast ends of the spectrum. I think there's middle ground there, Joe, where we can get this thing at least up and running. And maybe with time, you can get some fans involved, and maybe we can get back to a little bit more normalcy that we were accustomed to. But we got to get something going.
Yeah, and the proposal that you mentioned, Evan Drellich, I saw him with it first last night. He's with The Athletic. He tweeted last night that the Players Association delivered its proposal Sunday afternoon. Their proposal includes a schedule that has 114 games starting June 30th, ending on Halloween, October 31st. 2 years of expanded playoffs. So the idea that was in place for 7 teams from each league, 14 teams total in the playoffs, that would not only include the shortened season for 2020, but also expand into 2021. The $100 million of total deferred money was another point that was put in there, and then an opt-out for all players if they don't want to play. So we've heard rumors, we've heard some players speak out saying that they wouldn't be comfortable playing, or they would want more answers before they would start playing this year, and they would have an opt-out to where they wouldn't have to play if they didn't want to, if they didn't feel safe enough to play.
Let me ask you something though. That was the one portion of that. If they opt out, do they still expect to be paid?
I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine anybody.
Or do they get a portion of their salary? See, I think if you're going to opt, because a guy might want to opt out and say, "Well, I'm going to opt out because I want to protect myself," but he'll say, "I'm concerned." So, do you say, "Well, you don't get paid," or you get a smaller portion of your salary, or maybe your deferred money is extended further? And that's the key here. I think the word defer is going to be what's going to make this deal happen, because of the fact that the owners are going to say, hey, look, we don't have any money now. We may not have any next year. There may be a lockout the year after that. So we won't be able to give you any legitimate money for at least 3 years, maybe 4. And if that's the case, if you're a player and you're still playing, that's a nice little piece of change to have. But what if you're out of the game and all of a sudden you get that one check for the deferred money? I got news for you. Most guys won't see checks that large in their retirement stage, because a lot of times retirement was forced. So I think we're going to have to play with that word defer a little bit more and get to the bottom of it. But I think, going back to my original point, if a guy wants to opt out, there's a penalty that comes with it, I would think.
Yeah, and that's a few things with the deferred money. Is that $100 million per team that they're saying that the owners would be able to defer contracts for players later on? What's the lingo there was one that confused me. But with the defer, or with the opt out, so for example, 2 of the biggest names that have spoken out, Mike Trout said that he didn't want to play if it was just and Clayton Kershaw also said that if it was just based in one city like Arizona and it was players only and they couldn't bring their families, they spoke about how they would not play. And I think it was it Blake Snell, the pitcher for the Rays, also has had many comments while playing video games about the current situation. So if those guys just to say, I'm not comfortable, I'm not playing, I don't see how they can expect to be paid. I understand the players' argument here, where there was a deal in place in March for how much money they were going to make and what the settlement was, and now the owners want to change that. I get their argument there, but to not play at all and expect money makes no sense.
I don't know very few places where you elect not to work and they still pay you. So I think there's probably some wiggle room there also. But again, they're talking. And I think the best thing for everybody here is the less we hear, I think the better off we are, because they're working behind closed doors. If we can keep the agents and the uninformed players out of the way, I think we can get a deal done.
You mentioned the agents and uninformed players. That's a really nice transition to where I was going next with this, because one thing that I have been so surprised about are the former players that are coming out in defense of the owners and coming out and telling the current players to play. A-Rod being one of them that has come out and talked about the players, for the amount of times that he opted out and the amount of money that he made in his career and the fact that he was suspended an entire season for cheating. A-Rod seems like one of those guys that probably should keep a few opinions to himself in this matter. But one guy that's very vocal is Trevor Bauer, now pitching with the Cincinnati Reds, the former Indians pitcher, who has spoke out recently about Scott Boras being a part of these negotiations and how that's not good for anybody, for when an agent for players is getting involved in baseball starting back up. And it was former Cardinal Kyle Loesch that tweeted to him, Trevor, I'm going to chalk this up to immaturity. While your generation is talking MLB business while playing video games and complaining publicly how the union is doing, us out-of-touch ex-players aren't happy standing by watching you wreck what was built. Handle your grievances with your union in private. Maybe you have and they told you to kick rocks, but hey, you've built a brand and people on social media think you're cool. Congrats. To which Trevor Bauer simply responded, okay, boomer.
Well, let's back up a little bit. And Kyle Loesch, former Cardinal, of one of my favorites, as a matter of fact, always an honest guy, former Boras client. But I think that the older guys see that, it's a new day with regard to how things work. And I think they do simple math and realize that there isn't as much money available as the players seem to think there is. With that said, you have to make some adjustments along the way and be able to capitalize on other revenue streams that owners are starting to embrace. And for instance, the whole MLB.com and all the MLB merchandise thing, that whole arm itself has been a very lucrative income for the owners. Maybe the players want a little bit more of that. I mean, there's a lot of different things we have to go through in order to make sure we find the most efficient revenue streams. Now, again, for Kyle Loach to kind of say, "Hey, kid, why don't you check it at the door?" I think he's right, because a lot of this is the first time any of these kids have gone through this, and they don't know what's going on, because I got news for you. We don't know. This is something our world has never gone through with regard to how things are working, and just the angst that comes with it, where we have to make sure that we need to step back and take a deep breath and be patient, instead of being a rabble rouser, in some cases not totally being informed. And I think Blake Snell displayed that earlier, because he was totally on another planet with regard to what reality is all about. And I think we haven't heard much more from them. We heard from Max Scherzer, and I think Max Scherzer was just trying to be a person in the room that wanted to make sure the voice was heard, and I respect that, because he's got obviously a lot at stake. But when you look at how this whole thing is unfolding, Joe, I mean, it's new territory for everyone, and I think we all have to try and walk slowly and softly to make sure we don't step on the next landmine.
Yeah, Jack Flaherty has also been very outspoken about this on social media. He's been outspoken about many issues on social media here lately, something that we're going to get into later on in the show as well. But he seems like somebody that has done a very good job early in his career of informing himself on everything going on. And I would imagine that a lot of that has to do with some of the guys that are in the clubhouse with him that he has that he's not only learned from for things on the field, but off the field.
Yeah, I think one of the things about Jack, and I consider Jack a good guy and a good friend, very smart guy, very, very intelligent young man who has no problem asking questions. I'm sure he's learned some things from inside the clubhouse, but I think Jack is also a guy who's going to go out and find the answers himself. He's been very proactive, you're right. And I think he wants to make sure that not only are they doing this for themselves now, but that when he becomes a free agent and when it's his turn to be one of the leaders in baseball, he wants to make sure he's built a foundation of understanding vision. And so I commend him, and I also commend his advocacy as far as everything else that's going on in the world. And we might as well open that can up. We got a lot of problems going on, obviously, but I am really happy to see teams and players and coaches speaking out and just saying, "Hey, enough is enough." Because while, there are guys who play together who live in different zip codes, but you know what? They may be closer to each other than some of their family members because they spend so much time together and they work hard to get to a certain point. The more people we have on board to say what's going on is not what we are about, I think the quicker we can come to some sort of new direction to try and reduce, if not eliminate, the bias that goes on in this country. I mean, this just didn't happen yesterday, all right? I've been in business for almost 40 years, and I've seen a whole lot just in the media industry. I've been that person. I didn't have somebody put his knee on my neck, but I've had that same abuse from police for the fact that I didn't look like them. And I know other people who've had even things worse than them. So the question for me is, I know everybody talks about we need to have a conversation. Well, I think we've passed the conversation. I think we all know what's going on. The question is, how do we become better listeners? The question is, how do we find a method of implementation to make sure we can reduce this, again, if not eliminate it? And how do we find the right leaders and messengers who don't have a hidden agenda, who isn't aligned with a party or a group? I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't really care anymore, because it seems like every time we talk about things, we always preface it by the Republican congressman from somewhere or the Democratic senator from elsewhere. I don't really care about that anymore. I just care about people in this country and around the world who understand that we've got a problem. And when we see people who protests were designed to make people recognize there's an issue and make them uncomfortable. And I think right now the protest has succeeded. Now, that doesn't absolve the individuals who find it convenient to destroy neighborhoods and businesses and things that have been established for so many years. That's a different group of people that we have to weed out because they have a different mission. And it's the mission that creates anarchy and more despair amongst our society. And we don't need any more. Man, we're in the middle of a freaking pandemic. All right. That's something else we've never seen before. But for me, as a Black man, I've never been so devastated by what I saw this weekend since the day Martin Luther King was assassinated. I was very young then, and I saw the anguish and the fear in the eyes of my parents and people older than me. And that's what it brought me back to Saturday night, watching things unravel in the manner that they did, where nobody knew what was next. And we still see that. So it's a challenging time in our society for sure.
It's been heartbreaking for me to see as a white man. I have not faced any of the issues that you and many others have in America. And through my teenage years, I went to school with a lot of Black guys, and I am seeing them now posting on social media during all of this about the stories from when they were, when I knew them, when they were teenagers, when they would get their driver's license and their dad or their mom would sit them down and explain to them what to do at a traffic stop and how to avoid being put in that situation. And seeing some of their stories and seeing some of their experiences, it's clear that we grew up in different cities, that we grew up different ways. Even though we went to the same school, we played the same sports, we were in the same classes, we hung out together, that their upbringing was very different than what I was, the way I was allowed to grow up. And I'm seeing and hearing stories from people that I thought I knew so well that it turns out I didn't. I didn't know what they were dealing with on a daily basis. And I have spent a lot of time this weekend reading what they have been writing and just doing that, not commenting, not saying anything, not posting any of my thoughts on my own, because I feel like the best thing for somebody like me to do is to sit there and listen, to hear what the problem is and hear what ideas they have as far as how to fix this. Because there's no reason. I have seen too many people that have jumped in with with one person posting something. There's no reason to jump in. Okay, but there's no reason to add on to that. It is important to just listen to what pain they have or what issues they have experienced in their life. And if you haven't experienced those as a white male, there's no reason for you to jump in and try to add on to it, because you don't know what they've lived through.
Yeah, your points are very valid. One of the things about sports, you didn't have time to hate a guy because of the color of his skin. You might have hated him because the color of his uniform was different than yours. But when you're winning and you're competing, I didn't have time to look at a guy to my left or my right to see what color he was. And in most cases, that was the same with me. And you're talking to a guy who played every sport, including hockey. I just didn't have time for it. And my good teammates and the people, and there are a lot of great people in the world of sports, don't get me wrong. But man, we don't have time for that. We're trying to enjoy what we do and trying to achieve the common goal of winning when I was competing in different things. And now in the business of sport, we're trying to find things that are fun to talk about. But we have an element, man, that we're not listening. If they would just do a better job of listening, I'm not asking them to be in my shoes, okay? But just understand what it's like. That's where it's got to start, with us being better listeners, and it shouldn't come down to thousands of people around the country. This isn't a Detroit issue or Chicago issue. They're doing it in Salt Lake City. They're doing it in Seattle. They're doing it in Portland. They're doing it in places. They're doing it in Minneapolis. places that we never, ever would think about when it came to civil unrest. So when you have that situation unfold before your very eyes and you've never seen it before, it's almost like the pandemic. I've never seen this before. What do I do about it? Well, you have a better chance in doing something about this than just washing your hands and, the things they tell us to do with pandemic. This is a situation where we can actually be more proactive. And again, whether you want to go out and march or whether you want to do something else constructive, just start with listening. Have a conversation with your friends that don't look like you. And that's the thing that in my business, since I've been in the business, uh, and you've been around a little bit, Joe, most people don't look like me that I'm around. But you know what? I got a lot of great friends in the business that don't look like me because we don't have time for it, and that's the thing that we have to do. We got to just be better listeners and then try and move forward. I commend the leagues like the NBA and the NHL who didn't waste a minute to come out and say, "Hey, look, this is wrong, and we're here to help solve the problem." Those are the things that we have to have more people that are willing to step in and do something. I also think the one element of people that we cannot forget here are the people who protect and serve us. Those are police officers. We hear one bad apple. Okay, there's more than one bad apple, okay? But I think we need to be better listeners to what these people go through every day because it's a very stressful job now. I mean, it's an honor to wear the badge and represent your community, but it comes with a lot of stress. We need to be better listeners to them and how we can help them do their job. And it's more than just acting right. I think for me, I think that police officers should be afforded the opportunity to visit with counselors and people quarterly, where it doesn't spiral out of control, where they can talk to people and just kind of let them know what they're thinking. These guys may come from a very rough environment at home. They may have domestic issues and they get to work. Somebody says the magic word and off they flip. Or they've been riding with a toxic partner for years who's taught them all the things that's wrong with being a police officer. There's so many things that they don't have anyone else to go to other than a guy in blue. We should make it available for them to be able to talk to people, even people that they're in the community that they serve, where we can hear their voices too, because their voices is as important as anyone else's in this whole debate.
No, I absolutely agree. So as we sit here, we had another night of unrest last night around the country. No signs of any of that slowing down. What kind of message would you give to anybody that is watching right now, that is considering possibly going out today or going out later tonight in the St. Louis area?
Well, I think it's okay to go out. If you have a voice and you want to be heard and you feel like you need to be part of this, then go for it. Go for it responsibly. Go for it in a representative manner on how you want to be treated and how you want your property to be treated. For those who have a different agenda, your day is coming. Your day is coming where we're going to out you and we're going to put you in a place where you can't hurt anyone and you won't have the impact that you're trying to have on our world. But for those people who need to express and need to get out, remember, Joe, we've been cooped up for almost 3 months. All right. And I see a lot of anger and a lot of frustration from that. A lot of people have lost their jobs, and it's just a boiling point to just this send everybody over the edge. But, a lot of people made some great sacrifices in this country for us to be able to express ourselves freely, responsibly. And as long as we continue to do that and people listen better and say, you're right, let's figure out how we can move forward, I'm all for that. But for the other ones who are going to create anarchy and dissension and have everyone showing distrust in each other, there's no place for you here. And at some point, they'll be dealt with too.
we move on from that as we start to wind things down here. You're watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. If you miss any of it, you can go back. It'll be not only in podcast form but also up on our YouTube page later on this afternoon. So you'll be able to watch everything if you've missed the first half hour of the show. Sunday night, we saw the second part of the Lance Armstrong 30 for 30. You've been locked in to the Lance Armstrong story. So I want to hear from, has it changed anything with the way that you view Lance Armstrong and what he did a decade ago?
Yes, it has changed. He's a bigger jerk. I was a fan of cycling, and I don't know, other than Tiger Woods, I don't know if there's been one person that could put a sport on the map like Lance Armstrong did. He was obviously successful. We learned later that because he was successful because he was on things that other people weren't. But his demeanor and his lack of culpability in this whole ordeal was almost insulting with respect to how he felt he had been treated. Bad dude. He just wasn't a good person. Still appears not to be one because he's never been truly remorseful. His feeling is his punishment was losing his financial wealth. Well, okay, I'm sorry about that, but you cheated, not me. But yeah, I just found him to be repulsive.
And he went about it. He ruined a lot of other people's financial wealth along the way, too. So it's not just him. He's not the only one losing out on this. He drug a lot of people down as he was kicking and screaming and claiming his innocence over the years before finally coming out and admitting everything that he did wrong.
Yeah. And you know what, Joe, that's a good point you make, because it's kind of like, yeah, I did it, but I don't know why I should be punished like this. I mean, dude, you broke the rules. You knew it. You pulled every string you could possibly pull to be exonerated, and you were lying the whole time. I think one of the most interesting points of the whole thing is the interview with Oprah, where he admitted he'd done all these things, and he had to tell his kids that, because he had one kid who was getting in fights in school or something. And he had to tell him that your dad's been a liar. I mean, Joe, you're a parent. I mean, could you ever imagine looking your kid in the eye and say, I'm a liar? I've been lying to you. And that said all you needed to know about him. So I am not a fan of him and how he's lived his life. But he is who he is. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with him. I don't have to watch him. I don't have to see that he's in an event. But I don't know if there's anybody who single-handedly almost destroyed an entire sport, because we were under the impression that they were all cheating, and maybe we were right. At least the good ones were concerned. But for a whole sport to almost be vanquished because of the greed and just the demeanor of one person, it's incredible.
Especially as a sport too that usually the world only watches 1 month out of the year for one event too.
You're right. I mean, I think here's the other thing. No matter how old you are or how young you are, we all have the one thing in common, that we've all been on a bicycle, okay? At some point in our lives. We've watched our kids do it, and we've done it. And to see a person excel at something we all thought we could do, and to see him take it to a level that, it's like incredible, where he was winning all the time. He didn't look overly buff like you see guys in baseball and the other sports where they use performance enhancing drugs. He looked like just a guy, but he had moved the needle so far that it was beyond anything we could recognize, that has put us in a position of like, I can't believe somebody could do all of that. Well, he did, and he almost got away with it.
Almost, yeah. And he hasn't now. And if what you said is true, that he comes off as a bigger jerk in the 30 for 30s, hopefully he doesn't benefit financially much from what he just showcased the last few weeks.
He's giving away a lot of money or giving it back because of all the lawsuits that he was involved in. it appeared that he lives a comfortable life. I know at the end they said he's doing a podcast with one of his former teammates, but I think he's almost too toxic to sponsor. Not because of his reputation as a cheater, but his reputation of being an asshole. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, he's not a good guy.
That's when you just throw the sponsorships out there. You don't have him do the live reads for it, or you don't have him endorse the products himself.
And you probably don't ask him to wear too much of your stuff. I mean, it's kind of an odd situation that we don't normally see. But man, we are a society that cannot get enough of bad guys. I mean, you look at him, you look at Barry Bonds. I think those two guys stand out the most. Two of the biggest bad people we've seen in sports. And
did Barry Bonds take anybody down with him the way that Lance Armstrong did?
Right. No, not like Lance did. Barry is another guy. He'll take that to the grave with him too. But you're right about Armstrong. I mean, he ruined a sport. He ruined careers. He ruined families. He did it all. And now he's trying to repent in some regards. But it's too late. It's too late. He even acknowledged. He said to go tell a guy, I'm sorry, it wouldn't be enough.
You mentioned sponsorships. One of the ones that we have here with Lunch with Claibs and Joe is Munganast St. Louis Acura. Hey, the all-new 2021 Acura TLX is now here. You can go to St. Louis Acura right now, at stlouisacura.com right now, and see the video introducing the new Acura TLX. It'll be available on the showroom coming up this fall.
So
my car.
Wheel it yet, huh?
No, you can't get behind the wheel. Maybe you can. Because you've done enough with the folks at Munganast over the years that they might find one for you to drive here next week.
Jamie Burkhardt and his crew over there just do a phenomenal job. I bought cars from Jamie for a number of years, and the service and everything that they provide makes you feel like the time and investment you put into Munganast is well worth it. I mean, there are a lot of great dealers in town. I'm not going to tell you that there aren't. But I can tell you firsthand experience that what Jamie Burkhardt and his bunch are able to do, not going to find it everywhere these days. And while we've gone into the virtual direction of how we purchase things, there's nothing like the personal service that you're going to get from Munganast. And that'll set themselves well above a lot of people you talk to.
Absolutely. You've purchased cars from them. My car is from Munganast. Great people there at the Munganast family, and especially at Munganast St. Louis Acura. Hey, this week, I do want to mention that this past weekend on my podcast, I had Greg Wyshynski on, the former Puck Daddy. What's that?
Yeah, good show. I enjoyed listening to it.
You know what, the stuff that we did with Greg Wyshynski, I like that, the info that he brought forth about that. And then we had Greg Warren, the local comedian. We had him on the show. I don't know if you heard this or not, along with Bob Ramsey, who's also our guest on Off the Wall. You can, by the way, Claibs, you are featured in Off the Wall. Rammer has a photo of you up on his wall from about 30 years ago. So
it's longer than that. About 30 years ago. Yeah, we started fooling around in the late 80s. Rammer and I used to do St. Louis U basketball at the old Kiel Auditorium.
Yeah. You guys have the big the things that you see the big headphones on in this in the picture. Yeah.
You know what? The headphones are so big you can put your car keys and wallet in them. That way you never lose them. I mean, they had that much storage space for them. And as I was telling you earlier, we traveled, we carried our own equipment, and Rammer used to have this tackle box for, where you use for fishing, and he would have every extra cable, wire, jack, you name it, in order to get a broadcast on the air. We were our own engineers. Well, he was. I didn't do anything. I wasn't I could turn it on, but I couldn't do anything else. But man, we had so much fun doing it, and that's why he's my best friend, because of the times we had together.
Yeah, it was we had a good show with him. You could see that right now. It's up on claibsonline.com. It's also available on the YouTube page, so you can watch the video that I do with him. Also had Will Gavin on, a friend of mine from Talk Sport over in the UK. I had him on to talk a little FIFA, but we ended up actually talking real sports too, and talking a little bit about how our countries are each handling the global pandemic. I'm trying to get, so I don't know if you heard the end of our show from this past Saturday, but my co-host Andy Hanselman and I, we started talking about the Ram player who went out and tried to burn 10,000 calories in one day, and he succeeded in doing so. And it got into a discussion about whether or not you could eat 10,000 calories in one day and how difficult that would be. I posted a question about it, and Ryan Kelly, the home loan expert, actually reached out to me and said that he has a friend who is a big fitness guy who has not only succeeded in doing a 10,000 calorie challenge, has also attempted to do 20,000 calories in one day. And I'm trying to get that guy on the show next week.
That's before he blows up.
The guy's in incredible shape. I mean, it's like, you've seen, Michael Phelps, The Rock, you see their diets and how much they do in a day. I mean, it's similar to that, where it's just the ultimate cheat day.
But, they have the metabolism of a hummingbird too.
Yeah.
I mean, they can just go through it. If I even fathom 10,000 calories, I'd start gaining weight, let alone, do it any other way. I'm fascinated by it. I'm anxious to hear about it. But, as we like to say, don't try this at home, kids. I mean, you can't do it at home because it takes a special person to do it.
Yeah, I've already been thinking in my head about certain things, like what I could eat during the day that I would enjoy to get up to that 10,000 calorie mark. And it sounds like a really, really fun day, but it's not something that I really want to
try. You'd be like on the couch,
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm thinking how many
are you like daddy,
Yeah. I'm thinking how many beers, how many milkshakes, how many Big Macs.
You work too hard to get where you're at, man. Just let somebody else carry the water on this.
So
you lost 15. I stepped on the other day and I'm down like 7. And I was like, all right, I got to start eating again. Because, at first when this whole thing unfolded, that's all we were doing. We were eating a little this, we were nibbling, we were doing that. And now we've kind of leveled off as far as what we eat. As I think I've told you, when I go to the grocery store, I make a list of things not to buy that I know are going to be good for me. But it's amazing how you can all of a sudden start losing weight. So I got to get back in the gym and start doing some more lifting and just try and get stronger again, man, because I don't want people thinking I'm sick or anything.
No, I don't think that. I mean, the work that you've put in, the work that, you can actually go to gyms now over on the Missouri side. Here on the Illinois side, I still have to wait, I think, about 3-4 more weeks. So I still have about a month left of making up my own stuff as I go.
I think it'll happen sooner in Illinois. I think that the numbers are indicating things have kind of leveled off and decreasing as far as people who are positive. And I think they'll gradually do it. I think the key for all these businesses is you got to have enough space where you can justify being open. But I think the gyms will be open here fairly soon. We don't all want to look like the governor.
What all do you have lined up for this week? Do you have anything that you can promote yet?
We're going to do Dr. Rick Lehman. We're going to do him this week. We're also going to do Dave Sims, a good friend of mine. Dave Sims has been in business for 40 years. He's done the NCAA. He's the voice of the Seattle Mariners. He's done Sunday Night Football, done a lot of things, and just a great friend. And we're going to shoot the breeze about how he sees things, not only with the civil unrest, but the direction he sees baseball going in, being the voice of the Mariners and some of the great football. 1 year he called 2 no-hitters in 1 year.
Really?
He's the only guy. He either did 2 or 3. We'll find out when we talk to him. But he's had a fascinating career, and according to him, he's going to do it a little while longer.
You mentioned no-hitters. This day in Cardinal history, we have a brand new month, 30 new days of Cardinal memories as we wait for Cardinal baseball to start back up. And today's memory, June 1st, is actually a no-hitter from 8 years ago that Johan Santana threw against the Cardinals. That's up right now on the podcast and on claibsonline.com as well.
Darndest thing I ever saw, man, and you can listen to it on online today, about Santana and his career, because, man, after that, different guy completely.
Yeah, we talk about that on there as well. So plenty of stuff available each and every day, something new coming to you on claibsonline.com. So next week, you say we're taking this show on the road, possibly next Monday. We're going to work on it.
We'll make a phone call and we'll see if we can get over there and just sit there at lunchtime and just do our thing, man. And at least we'll eat well if we don't do anything else while we're there.
That's true. Eat well and eat cheap over there at Fast Eddie's. You don't have to bring a whole lot of money to eat well over at Fast Eddie's Bon Air in Alton, Illinois. This has been Lunch with Claibs and Joe. I'm Joe Roderick. That's Mike Claiborne, powered by Ameren, Illinois, and driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura. Again, plenty of stuff available for you on claibsonline.com each and every day. So head on over there and see what you've been missing. Mike, we will talk to you again or see you again right here next week.
Count on it. Thanks for listening and watching, everybody.
Have a great day, everybody.